All right, hello friends. Thank you again for joining me. My name's Dan, and make it official right off the bat. It's a Daily Art Adventure number 790. Yahoo, sneaking up on that big 800. Final edit layer number 2. So I already did. Just show you real quickly. I'm working on 2 paintings at the same time. This one's for Buddy. Two very different paintings, but working on them, as it turns out, perfectly in parallel. All right, and this is quote unquote, as you see there in my title, quote unquote, the final edit layer, which isn't really the final layer anymore, but it's still the final edit. All right, and I failed to say this in final edit layer part 1 earlier this afternoon, but this is the one step in Dan Nelson's Kerwackety technique, as I called it earlier today or yesterday, whichever it was. This is the one step in my unconventional technique that intermediate students have the most problem with. And when I'm teaching live, that is. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is because once we enter into this, that is the opaque approach, or the opaque phase of painting, most of my students go, oh, whew, thank goodness, finally I can start painting. You know, because I know how to do this, they say, because most artists in my generation, and each generation either side of me, most artists paint opaquely. There's a whole historical reason for that, which I won't go into now, but because I've gone into it many times. It's a whole historical reason why people paint very opaquely. Did I overpronounce that word good enough for you? There's a reason people paint so opaque, because that is not the historical norm, by the way. It's the exception rather than the rule. Anyway, so when we break out the opaque paint, my intermediate student, people who have painted before, they go, oh, thank God, now I can paint the way I know how to paint. And then they proceed to essentially ruin the painting that they've just produced, because they haven't quite got this transparent concept down. Anyway, so I'm going to try as I paint here today, to point out what it is about. Oh, hang on, I've got some noise. Hang on. There we go. I'm going to try to point out what it is about this layer that gives my students fits, and what to watch out for. Okay, first of all, the reason it gives them fits is because they overpaint. They paint way too much. They paint way too thick, way too heavy, way too they plaster on the paint, and thereby obliterate essentially all the beautiful transparent work that they have created in a class setting. Would be the beautiful transparent work they have created over the previous 2 or 3 or 4 hours. So you can see, to then obliterate 4 hours of work should be a very distressing eventuality. It's not a happy moment to lose work that you've done. Okay, so the number one caution is paint as little as you can get away with. Now, unfortunately, I'm saying that today, right here, while I'm working on this sky. What I'm doing right now is not a good example, because this particular sky is going to require quite a bit of overpainting. But even so, it's less painting than my students most of them would tend to do. All right, so that's number one. Go light, go light, go light. Secondly, well, let's zoom in here so you can get a better picture. Secondly, almost all of the color mixing that I do in this stage of the painting, almost all of it is dictated to me. That word might be a little bit strong. Strongly suggested to me is perhaps a little more friendly and accurate term. But nah, I'm going to stick with dictated. Virtually all the colors that I mix up, and again, quick shot of my palette, I am indeed mixing like a traditional oil painter, mixing colors. This is the final edit layer is the only step in my painting process where I mix colors essentially on the palette. And what I was saying was almost all the colors that I'm mixing are in response to what's already on the canvas. Another way to put that is I'm not mixing up colors or making colors willy-nilly, whoever willy-nilly is. I'm matching what's already there pretty much throughout the entire final edit phase, the opaque phase of my painting process, the only opaque layer. Opaque and translucent, by the way, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so I'm matching the colors that are already there, albeit one tick, whatever tick is, one tick lighter than what's already there. Okay, so matching it and then going just a little bit lighter, paler, lighter, whiter than what's there. Got it? Now, having said that, let's talk about what I've been working on this whole time, which is these power lines in the sky. Let me show you again. There's my photo reference. You probably can't see. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, roughly 17 power lines, cables, wires from top to bottom. And some of those you won't even be able to see, I'm sure, with the resolution of your monitor. But trust me, that's how many there are, and that's fairly accurately what I'm not matching wire for wire by any means. I'm just trying to faithfully give the impression, give an accurate impression of what's up there. All right, now I talked earlier today quite a bit about the art of painting skinny things with fat brushes. So again, these are fat brushes. It's all relative, right? I talked about how the way to create a skinny line using fat brushes, in other words, quick review, you do not paint skinny lines. We're not watercolor, we're not talking watercolor. You do not paint skinny lines by breaking out the skinny little brush, okay? You paint the skinny lines by putting down fat ones and then making them skinny. I hear a word coming on. You put down fat marks and then you skinify them. You skinify those marks. Whoops, it's a little bit too much green there. So again, I'm struggling just like it's a happy struggle. I'm not, don't want to convey the notion that I'm getting all upset or anything like that. Nothing of the sort. But I am working to match colors, which means, just like you, sometimes I miss, I pick up a little bit of too much of one color when I'm mixing. I say this partly because I know that some of you early journey painters, you get angry at yourself when you're mixing colors, because I know it, I've seen it, I've heard it, I know what's going on. You get mad at yourself because you messed up a color mixing. It's like, oh, dang it, I picked up too much white, blue, yellow, red, green, whatever it is. And I want you, and the reason you get mad is because you live under the silly delusion that good painters never make that mistake. Well, please be disillusioned of that illusion, will you? That's ridiculous. We all do that. We all do that, just part of the business. So anyway, that's just a real quick aside. And you don't even give yourself the luxury of giving a good spew. Oh, don't even go there. That's ridiculous. Paint, that just it just is part of the business. So stop kicking yourself when you mix. There you go. So this is turning into, at the moment, it's turning into a little clinic about how to paint skies. Now there's many different ways to paint skies, okay? So I don't mean to construe by any means that this is the only way, but this is one pretty good way. And I'll be you're getting a lot of glare. Let me see if I can fix that. That's a little better. Let's zoom in here and see how that looks. It's not done yet, but just as it is right now, I'm going to announce to you that that's a pretty good sky. And then I'm going to tell you why it's good. Okay? So I'm not just patting myself on the back. I'm trying to teach here. So I want to describe to you why that's a pretty good sky. Well, first of all, how did it get to where it is now? I've already answered that. The answer is because I'm responding with every stroke, virtually, I'm responding to what's already on the canvas, all right? I'm responding to the color that's already there. Like, I don't know if you can see, there's a little lavender blush color right there. There's a little pink salmon color right here. There's yellow-ish, dull orange tan right there. There's green there. So, by the way, this is why it's a good sky at the moment. It's because of all those colors. Well, how did those colors get there? The answer is that they were hinted at in the underpainting. And as you know, if you've been following me, this underpainting this is layer number 12, I believe, on this painting. So there are as many as 11 different layers of paint. Now, some of those layers were pencils. So there's up to 10 layers of paint underneath what I'm doing right now. All of those I call underpainting. This is the only layer that I call overpainting. Painting over. And hello, Cruzhawk. Good to have you on board. Hello, Barbara. We missed you today. Good to have you back. Hello, Brenda. Good to have you as well. I get a kick out of you guys greeting each other. That just tickles me to pieces. Way to go. Let me go back to a description I use often when I'm describing my painting technique. I say to you, I say all the time, that one of my chief objectives, goals, in the underpainting stage, of which there are, well, in this case, 11, I think, if my count is right. One of my chief objectives is to create sufficient chaos in the underpainting stage. And then I usually say, so that I have lots to respond to in the overpainting stage. Well, guess what? Here I am in the overpainting stage. Got it? So I am there. I finally arrived. It is overpainting time. Woohoo! So now is when I get to take advantage of or cash in on all the chaos that I have managed to get even into the sky. And it's no mystery really as to, like right now I'm painting, I'm back to pink again, right on top of green, blue, and yellow. Well, why am I doing pink in this sky? The answer is because it's already there in the underpainting. And next question, well, how did pink get in your sky in the underpainting? And the answer is because I saw to it that when I was doing my whole underpainting, I made plenty of mess. I created a pretty high degree, if I could use that word. I created plenty of chaos. That's why there is now pink. And again, I want you to sort of understand that at whatever layer, in the acrylics, I'm sure, at whatever layer it was that I was putting some pink up there in the sky, I wasn't so much thinking, well, by golly, when I get down to the final edit layer, some pink is going to look really good in this sky. That was not how I was thinking, okay? I wasn't. What was I doing? I had pink on my brushes, and I just went kind of crazy. Just kind of went bonkers, went something like that. Literally, you could go back and watch it. I don't know when it happened, but clearly it happened because there's pink there. But it wasn't carefully pre-planned. I'm trying to make that clear. Does that make sense? It just happened. Okay, I'm not good. I'm going to modify my normal shtick. I say I'm not smart enough to paint good. And then I don't normally say, but I'm smart enough to spy, see some good painting when I see it and keep it. That is, keep it in the final edit layer. I keep stuff by painting around it. I cover up stuff by painting over it, right? Okay, that's what I normally say. I'm not smart enough to paint good, but I'm smart enough to spot. Well, I'm going to modify that, say, and I'm not smart enough to paint good, but I'm smart enough, so to speak, to set up an environment, set up a process. That's a better word. I'm smart enough to set up a chaotic process by which happy little accidents will indeed accidentally happen. Did you catch all that? I'm not smart enough to paint good. I just have stumbled on or developed and crunched out a technique that makes me look like I'm a good painter. And it's mostly this creating chaos. You know, this, like, if I may, sounds like I'm boasting, but I'm not. But doggone it, that is a amazing sky. Again, it's got ultramarine blue, tan, lavender, green, salmon, pink, plum color, green, more yellow, more green, phthalo blue, right? And it's got a pleasant texture, and it's all kinds of stuff. All right, I ain't smart enough to paint that good. I am smart enough from experience to learn how to, in the underpainting stages, slap down enough goofy stuff that I know that when I get to the final edit layer, which is what I'm in right now, it's going to look good. I'm going to be glad that I did. I'm going to be glad that I painted kind of like a little bit like a madman. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, because I'm telling you some good stuff here. hear ye, I am telling you some good stuff. If it was really good stuff, I wouldn't have to announce it, would I? I remember really when I learned this, it was 2001. I was doing one of my storytelling paintings, fantasy paintings, which I enjoy very much. I've just never been able to make any money at it. If suddenly my fantasy paintings went viral in Japan and everybody started buying my prints and wanting originals, I would take time out of my life and make $1 million painting something if it went viral. But it's never happened yet. So, but I remember exactly the painting I was working on. I was working on the roof, like a thatched roof, or maybe it was, I don't remember, maybe it was a red tile roof of an old castle. I did a lot of castles in those days because it was, you know, storytelling art. Great fun. And in an accidental moment when I wasn't quite paying attention, and I wasn't painting like the control freak that most of us normally are, my brush sort of did something without my permission on that roof. And I really wasn't smart enough to paint that good. But after my brush made this mark without my permission, I looked at it and said, wow. Okay, so I was smart enough to recognize a bit of good painting when it accidentally showed up on my canvas. Okay, so I had that much discernment. I wasn't smart enough to do it on purpose, but it spilled out onto my canvas accidentally. My brush did something that it was a happy little accident, perfect description. And I clearly remember making a mental note, and then months, probably several months later, I was putting together actually my first version of Breakable Laws of Painting, which is, in theory, a book that I'm writing. And the first iteration of version of this book was called The Mostly Immutable Laws of Painting. A feeble attempt at humor. I have long since discovered that not very many people in our culture know the word immutable, so my humor was completely lost on them when I said mostly immutable laws of painting. So I eventually changed it to the breakable laws of painting. But in that list, this is something I published in about 2004 or 5. In that list, mostly immutable laws of painting, I said, the best painting happens when you're doing something else. And I didn't mean the best painting happens when you're taking a bathroom break or making a sandwich for lunch. That's not what I meant. What I meant was when you're standing in front of your canvas and you're painting, but a happy accident happens. The best painting happens when you're not by accident. And little by little, that principle grew and grew and grew inside my awareness, inside my heart, mind, soul, consciousness. And it began more and more and more. Now, I was still early in it was still years before I would really launch out into the deep with this approach to painting that you see me using now. You know, the loose, multiple layers of acrylic underneath and oil on top. It was still some time away. But when I finally did begin to paint more or less in this manner that you see me painting in today, I was driven very much by that overarching principle. What overarching principle? This one, that the best painting happens when you're trying hard to do something else. In other words, let me say it another way. Happy little accidents are the best way to paint. All right, you with me? Bob Ross's best quote by far. Happy little accidents really are the best way to paint. And once I truly understood that and embraced it, then I asked myself the question, well, if happy little accidents really are the best, is when the best painting happens, can you hear what's coming next? Then why not paint all happy accidents? Isn't that a logical question? If I really believe that the best painting is the stuff that happens by accident, then put your money where your mouth is, big shot. Why don't you paint all happy accidents? And voila, what do you know? It turns out that is a pretty good description of exactly what I do to this very day. So my 10, 11, or 12 underpainting layers is 90% happy accident on purpose. Does that make sense? So that's how come I've ended up, again, with this, and I wish you could see it in real life. I know it's so much better here than it is what you're seeing. That's why I've got 3, 4 different shades of green, 3, 4 different shades of pink, yellow, and blue. Why do I have all that? Because I created happy accidents. So when I paint, another way to say sort of the same thing, I am not white-knuckling this thing into existence. I am not forcing this painting to yield to my iron will. I'm just trying to say the same thing in different words. I don't control my paintings into existence. I create an environment, and the environment, which I've just described for you in several different ways, the environment is one in which crazy accidents can happen. Does that make sense? Now, does that mean, does that not mean if I'm not in control, which is a good description of my painting process, which most of you would say, yep, that is, you look like you're out of control. I would agree to that assessment. Doesn't that mean that you can really crash and burn and do a terrible painting sometimes? The answer is absolutely. In fact, that's how I make some of my really stupid mistakes, is because of the reckless manner in which I start my paintings does indeed result sometimes in some crazy mistakes. My painters group helps me a great deal. As I mentioned earlier today, when I held up the painting, I said, isn't that guy's arm a little too long? And I looked at it and said, oops, yes, I'm sorry. I was too busy throwing paint around to notice. So that's kind of embarrassing. Many artists, especially early journey painters, all the realists, they believe that great painting is the product of hyper control. Okay, that's exactly what I'm challenging and disagreeing with. I think if you paint in control, then when you're all finished, everything on the canvas will be something that came out of your head, imagination, and hands. That makes sense? Now, that might not sound bad to you. Well, that's what I want. I want everything that's on the canvas to be what came out of my head. Yeah, but let me propose a different scenario for you. How about if when you're done painting, there's a bunch of stuff on the canvas that you did not plan, foresee, control into existence. It happened accidentally, and it surprised even you, and it's way better than anything you would have made up if you were in complete control. All right, so I hope you're hearing, oh yeah, that is in fact the way Dan Nelson paints. You know, almost out of control until this layer right here, right? Until the final edit layer. I say often too, if you or someone were to watch me paint only through the first, say, 8 or 10 layers of my painting, and if they missed the final edit layer, they would have completely the wrong impression about how Dan Nelson paints. Right? They would say, oh yeah, he's that guy. Oh man, he paints like crazy. He paints like a madman. He paints so fast with 2 hands, you can't believe it. He just flies and he throws paint around, blah, 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 right? But now look at me. When I'm teaching a class in person, I often will say to the students, all right, I have 2 challenges for you. During the first half of the class, when we're doing all those layers of underpainting, I'm going to challenge you to try to be as messy as I am. And very, very, very few of them ever achieve that lofty goal. They cannot bring themselves to paint as messy as I am. And I said, okay, now in the second half of the class, we're going to trade roles. And I double dog dare you to paint as neatly as I do, and like I'm doing right now. And they can't do that either. So that's all right, because classes are, everybody's out of balance and so on. I'm asking my students to do weird things in classes. So I'm not criticizing by any means, but that is a fair description of how I paint. Early stages, crazy, crazy, messy accidents. This stage, this one stage in particular, is quite controlled, but still not, it's still more, I want more energetic strokes. I'm more concerned about energy than I am about accuracy per se. Accuracy is important, but I want energetic strokes. All right. So I'm nearly finished with the sky. Yahoo! At least this layer. I'll be coming back and do it again. Let's see what you guys are talking about here. I see a lot of chats finally happening. Oh boy, I'm way behind. Hello, Jane. Glad to have you rejoin us. Thanks for catching up. And Sengiz Gorin. Looks a little Japanese, manga-ish. Does it really? Now that's interesting. Huh. I'll take it. That's interesting analysis. Hang on, let me cleaning my brushes while I read your chats here. I need to wear a t-shirt that says, does that make sense? Do I use that phrase a little too much, do you think, Barbara? Jane, you hear my voice in your head. You poor dear. They probably sell pills. They probably make pills for that. Antidepressant, you know. Get Dan Nelson's voice out of your head. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. Oh boy. Barbara, that would be hilarious. Show up with it, one of those t-shirts on. Jane, indeed, you should take one. Hello, Marlis. Good to have you on board. Marlis, good question. No, not usually. I have not, well, yeah, I have students all the time that tell me they watch me all the time, but for some reason, usually they're not ones who chat. Bill chats from New Jersey sometimes. He'll pipe, or Maryland, he'll pipe up. Brenda, bless your heart. Thank you. Appreciate that. Marlis, I'm going to start that. It hasn't started yet, so you haven't missed anything. Hello, gang. Hello, Uncle. Welcome on board. All right. Tell you what, before I go any further, I think I mentioned in 2 broadcasts ago that By the time I finished, I am guessing that these wires in the sky, these power lines, whatever they are, will have been rendered 8 or 10 different ways. So here I am. This is either the 8th or 10th way, which is a little bit of palette knife, right? So again, the point being, whenever you have any kind of shape, which in this case is the shape of these, the lines themselves, that's a shape. When you have a shape or a pattern that's repeated, you want to employ several different methods or techniques for rendering that repeated pattern. So just a little bit of palette knife, that's good enough for now. I can add more later if I want to. All right, now I'm done with the sky, and I'm down to this messy stuff down here. I'm feeling a little bit daunted, frankly, just a little bit. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Break it down into bite-sized pieces. One of the most common, I need to clean off my palette, so forgive me just a minute. One of the most common places for me to start my final edit layer. The one option is the sky, and that's what I did this evening already. Started with the sky. But one of the other best options for where to start the final edit layer, one of the best options is to start with the lightest, brightest, whitest object. I did not do that. I started with the sky. That's perfectly fine. But now, let's go to sky. Let's go to lightest. All right. So I'm looking up at my reference. These bits here, there. I don't need to slavishly copy that, but that's a good guideline, good place to start. So let's just start there and then see what happens. Now I definitely want this to be a warm white, so I'm not doing pure white by any means. It's mostly warm. And I want you guys sort of tracking with me, breathing with me. You guys, as you say, you hear my voice in your head, then that voice should be saying right now, all right, what are we aiming for right now? What are we aiming for? Do I want accuracy? Do I want a kind of accuracy? The answer is absolutely, certainly. Now you know where I'm going with that, right? But what do I want way more than accuracy? Bing, bing, bing. You got it. Interesting marks. That's, again, that's why abstract realism is so much more challenging than realism. And it can get exhausting. Boy, don't get me wrong. Phew. Every stinking mark is a thinking proposition. How about that? Every mark requires visual thinking with your eyes, not some kind of scientific or mathematical analysis, but visual eye analysis. It's got to look interesting. And if I do it right, it will look interesting and realistic. Even though, strictly speaking, it's not going to be very realistic at all, strictly speaking. But who's speaking strictly? Right? Nobody. Nobody will be looking at this and counting pipes, counting wires or tubes or whatever. No, they'll just look at it rather globally, and their eye will tell them if I've captured the essence. Now, even that is a moot point, because as you know, virtually nobody's going to have this picture in front of them. Only conceivably the residents of New Bern, North Carolina, who know the building, and they won't know it that well. But anyway, if someone from New Bern were to see the painting, they would go, "Oh my goodness, that's the Mayola building," right? Which would, if I meet my goal, that's the kind of response I want. Nobody, of course, nobody else hardly in the whole country is going to have any idea. But, very important, but everybody in the Western world has seen things like this industrial mayhem. Here we go again, folks. I am painting a highly repeated motif. The texture on the front of this building, it's got ribs, right? It's a metal building with those ribs in it, like a tin roof, right? That kind of thing. So it's repeat, 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 which I always hear in Portuguese. Repete, repete, repete. One of the few Portuguese words I still remember. So I'm going to use several different methods for rendering that repeated pattern. And just in case you're keeping score, the first three I painted with brush. The next three I painted with a palette knife. The next several, I just painted a flat area, and now I'm going to scratch. I'm wanting a different shaped tool. There we go. So just in that little area, I've utilized 4 different techniques to portray, to illustrate, you could say, to render the ribs in that metal. Again, just a classic example of that principle. Whenever there's a highly repeated motif, shape, object, whatever, line, you must render that repetition in a whole bunch of different ways. Otherwise, you have redundancy and boringness. You have all of a sudden, I see a place for a grand smear. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. I'm going to leave this area here for a little unfinished. I'll come back and finish it later, just because I don't want to get too bogged down. Let's go back to white stuff over here. White stuff, that's the technical term. There's really a lot of room for palette knife skinny lines in this painting. I don't want to overdo it, of course. Okay, back up here to the sky for a minute. Oh, by the way, my sky is not finished. I was thinking of it, never managed to say it. I like it pretty much. There we go, I'm saying it myself. I like it pretty much, but it needs a little bit more highlight white light in it. Maybe I'll go ahead and do some of that right now. Okay, while I'm painting, am I on camera? Yeah. What I'm doing right now fits the instruction I give all the time. Whenever possible, look for an excuse to negative paint an object. That is to say, whenever possible, try to paint, in this case I'm painting this reddish railing, try to paint things not by painting the thing, but by painting whatever is behind it. All right, anytime you can. Why? Because it's one of the most surefire ways to create aesthetic pleasure in your viewer. That's saying a lot. That's a mouthful. I've described it so many times. Again, that's what we do when we do paint sky holes in a tree, right? I'm going to go up here into the cloud a little bit. I need some little bit more light, and I might do this 3 or 4 more times, adding more light to the cloud. Being careful not to be too careful. Being careful not to start painting pretty little fluffy clouds, which is so easy for me to do, because I like little fluffy clouds. So being careful to paint more abstract marks that accidentally look like clouds. All right, let's come back down to the foreground now. All right, I left a thought dangling. I'll go try to back and pick it up. Why should you, whenever possible, why should you try to render an object not by painting the object, but by painting what's behind it? That's the key concept. You're painting with paint. You're painting what's around the object. Okay, the reason is these pipes, these reddish pipes here, are a classic example. Every human being that would glance at that knows that sky is far away and the red pipes are in front of the sky, right? Every human being. You don't need any help analyzing that. You glance at it and you go, yeah, red pipes and wires and stuff in front of the bright sky. But when you paint the light sky, in essence, on top of, not on top of, but on top of this way, on a layer that's closer to the viewer. And then you're painting in reverse, you're painting the negative, and it creates just a split-second jiggle of confusion in the mind of the viewer. And that split second of confusion is experienced as aesthetic pleasure. I know that's weird. It takes your brain just a split second to straighten out, wait a minute, wait a minute. Pipes are far away, but the paint, sky paint, is closer. And that little wait a minute, analyzing and figuring it out creates a little, oh, isn't that cool? That's what your brain is saying. Oh, isn't that cool? I figured it out. I'm really making up a lot of stuff here. I'm painting essentially pure abstractions right now. I have almost no concern about what objects are up here. I do know that this is a wire cable, power line, something's going through the sky. I know that. But what is that red thing? I have no idea. And some of this other stuff, I have no idea. What pleases me is that it's fun to look at. It's interesting, it's attractive, even though it's not easy to decipher in the physical real world what it's supposed to be. But that's fine with me. Oh, I've got here this big orange cable. That needs some serious work. Let's try turning that into 2 cables. That's a good trick, by the way, I utilize fairly often. When I'm doing these power lines through the sky, and I have one line that's particularly fat, like this one, I'll draw a skinny line in between the two and turning it into essentially a double power line or telephone wire, whatever it is, going through the air, going through the sky. Does that make sense? Of course it does. Don't look at me like that. All right, I'm going to leave all that light stuff for a minute. Let's do some more mid-tone-ish. So ultramarine blue mixing with this, and a little bit of raw umber. My go-to color killer. Right, if I want a color killed, raw umber. Most of the time, a student grade raw umber is perfect for the job. So I've got a dull medium blue on my brushes. Again, it's very close to what's already there on the building. Just slightly lighter, as I say, 1 tick lighter than what's already there. Smudge, smear with the thumb. I usually say, don't paint with your fingers. And then I usually say, but it's okay, I don't have any cobalts or cadmiums on the canvas. Smearing now with a rag. Creating, again, just a little bit more chaos up here in this pretty sky. Yeah. I need to make now a darker bluish gray. Oh, that's way too blue. Let's add some. Okay, let's see if that's a little darker. Yeah, there we go. Anytime, if I match perfectly what's already on the canvas, that's a happy little mistake, accident, happy, nice one that happens, because then I can create some really subtle color shifts by putting down strokes that your eye can hardly see. If the color is so close to what's already there that your eye can barely pick up on it, but your eye can pick up on it, at least in real life, almost certainly not on the cameras that we're using here. So I have to tell you about it because I know you can't see it. But your eye, in fact, is such an incredible instrument, better than any camera ever made. Your eye can pick up on the subtle shift, and that also creates this, when your eye catches the subtlety, it releases a little joy juice in your brain. Here's a rough approximation of that. I imagine we've all had the experience at some point or other where I think of a corporation that maybe is celebrating its 100th or 50th or 10th anniversary or something, and they invite dignitaries to their big gala. I'm trying to think of a classy event, right? And they hand out a program, they hand out a brochure at the beginning of the evening. And just imagine with me that the cover of the brochure is, a photograph of their beautiful new building or something, but it's very dark. It's a nice, beautiful, say, nighttime shot, professionally shot by some gunslinger cameraman that they've hired. Beautiful shot. And you look at it and go, oh, that's beautiful. And then the second or third time that you look at that brochure, I'm just trying to just work with me here. Second or third time you pick up the brochure and you look at it, you go, oh my goodness. And you realize that there's an image superimposed on top of that beautiful photograph that is rendered only in a gloss or non-gloss varnish on top of the photograph. Does that make sense to you? I'm just helping you imagine. We've all seen something like that in a really expensive printing job, that is. And when that happens, your little brain, nothing personal, my little brain goes buddy, and goes, oh, look, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I didn't even see it the first time. Are you with me? Our brain really does get a kick out of subtlety. We really do enjoy visual subtlety. Now, evidently, we also enjoy being clobbered over the head by visual, I don't know what the word is, the opposite of subtlety. Evidently, I was, I was, I was thinking along these lines a month ago, 6 weeks ago, when I was painting at a big festival, 60, 80,000 people attending this festival. And it was a typical American festival, elephant ears, turkey legs, hot dogs, pizza, and a band playing loudly, several bands playing loudly, blocks apart. And a children's section with inflatable playland, inflatable toys for the kids, right? I was thinking about this because I think it's fascinating. There is something about a carnival, which is really, I think, the technical Old English word for what we now call a festival. A carnival. Think of the midway at your county fair or your state fair, either one. Human beings are funny. At least part of the time, we get a certain pleasure out of being clobbered over the head or smacked between the eyes with a visual overdose. Don't we? It's funny. There is a time for get down, kick, rock and roll. There's a time for that. Now, I have a bit of a beef because it appears that most people in our culture, that's the only kind of music they ever have time for. So here I am. Evidently I'm an elitist, a snob, or I'm just more sensitive because I grew up in a family that was intelligent whew, and appreciated good music. So when was the last time you went into a restaurant and there was a string quartet playing? Right? Not going to happen many places outside of Manhattan. Not going to happen very often. So anyway, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're just different. And I am bemoaning the fact that some people never experience anything more subtle than a 2x4 to the head artistically or musically. That seems to me, that does seem unfortunate. Not my problem, not going to worry about it. But anyway, I'm talking here about visual subtlety and how our eye really does enjoy. But if this is true, then what I'm painting right now is way more akin to the string quartet than it is to the garage band, rock and roll, mind-numbing, repetitious stuff that most people get most of their only in their life. So anyway, again, not my problems, not really complaining. I just think it's a very fascinating study, and that my painting falls into one of those categories. It is not. My paintings, generally speaking, are not. They're a little bit too subtle to go in a sports bar. Are you with me? They're just a little too subtle to go in a sports bar. And that's nothing wrong with a sports bar. I guess it helps to know who we are and where we fit into the grand scheme of things. I could wax philosophical about the state of our society and so forth, but guess what? I'm going to resist the temptation. That's as far as I'm going with that. Yay! One great big rant narrowly avoided. That was close, they all say, as they wipe the sweat from their brow. Whew, that was close. You guys are probably talking up a storm, aren't you? Yes, you are. Good. You're all talking to each other. That's just great. Barbara just finished her last pet portrait. Oh my goodness, 3 grandsons on ornaments. You go, girl. Bless you. And Brenda just finished 2 commissioned pieces. And Uncle 60 going to paint President Kennedy in the Oval Office. I don't know why that's funny. I just think it's funny. You go for it, man. Show us all your work as you proceed. That's funny. I know you're longing for the good old days or something, aren't you? Oh my goodness, bless you guys. Are you serious, Uncle? You really are. Good for you, man. Good for you. All right. I just read real quickly through all your conversation with each other. Way to go. You honor me by chatting around me. I appreciate that. That's really fun. There is greenery back here. There are trees back here behind a bunch of this industrial stuff, and I'm taking those trees, their placement, their presence in the painting is quite important. And while I've got green, let's do a little bit of the grass down here. And a little bit of grass down here. All right? It's okay with you? All right. You know what? This has been fun, but it's 8:30, and I told my wife and grandchildren that I'd come down and finish a movie or play with them or do something. And more importantly, I feel my energy level just sagging a little bit. And I am happy enough with this painting that I don't want to risk ruining it. You all know how easy it is to ruin a painting. It's one word. Well, one hyphenated word, 2 word. Overwork. It's so easy to overwork it. And so I'm going to stop now because I don't think I've overworked it yet. But I'm afraid that and it's easier to do that, ironically, it's easy to overwork it if you're tired. Isn't that weird? Because you lose your razor sharp judgment, as if my judgment is ever razor sharp. But anyway, you lose your judgment. I think it's coming along well. Again, I could entitle this whole painting A Study in White. White road, white car, white building, white clouds. And for beginners, for early journey painters, how do you paint white stuff? The answer is don't paint it white. And that's clearly what you're seeing. Now, there's going to be little bits of white here and there, of course. But it is going to look like a building that is painted white, that it's a white building. It will look like that. It'll look like a white car, in fact, maybe 2 white cars, white cloud, white building. But there'll be very, very little true or anywhere close to pure white on the painting when I'm finished. So that's part of the clinic. All right, you guys, been fun. Appreciate it. Hey, Jane. Yeah, please do like this episode. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for somebody answered the question. Yeah, I'm trying to, the other painting is a commission. This one I'm thinking of, if I can get a good enough painting, I want to enter it in Oil Painters of America. And believe me, when you try to get in OPA, you don't hold your breath. You just throw some up in the air and hope something sticks. But it's kind of an artsy painting, isn't it? All right, I'm going to go. Thanks, bye. Love y'all.